Today, I am live with a very special guest, Katie Stewart. She is a registered holistic nutritionist. She's also the founder of the Clear Skin Solution, and I'm going to get more into what she does in her bio. But before we do that, you are currently listening to the Health Coach Nation podcast. I'm your host, Haley Rowe. I'm a marketing and sales coach for wellness professionals, life coaches, and online entrepreneurs who want to book more clients and simplify their marketing process. And today I wanted to bring Katie on because I talk to so many wellness professionals who want to see a real life example of somebody who is in the field, who's been doing it for a long time, who's good at what they do. And I can speak to the fact that Katie is very good at what she does. I actually worked with her as a client in her Clear Skin program, and I loved it. It was game changing. It was one of my best investments. I was doing a lot of reflection questions for the end of the year in 2025. And what kept coming up about what were your good decisions? What did you like investing in? I was like, oh, that program. So I kept realizing how grateful I am for it. And Katie had dealt with stubborn acne herself and many health challenges throughout the year, which is what got her into holistic nutrition. She has a top podcast, and you just did a rebrand, so I want to hear, not recently, but somewhat recently. So I want to hear more about that, but has an amazing podcast, one of the largest acne nutrition companies in the world. And she's over in Canada. So thank you for being here, Katie. I'm so excited. And tell me just first about the podcast rebrand and what spurred that, and then we'll get into some questions.
Well, thanks for the lovely intro, Haley. I think I need to bring you around as my hype woman every time I go somewhere. That was fantastic. And I'm just so appreciative that I got to be on your podcast. You were on our podcast, Keep It Clear. The episode should be out shortly. So it's just nice to kind of do that back and forth. And you're right, we did a rebrand on the podcast back in the fall of last year, so 2025. It was originally the Clear Skin Chronicles. And when I picked the name, I just picked a random name. I didn't like it, to be honest, but I was like, if I don't pick something, I'm never going to do it. So it was one of those things, was progress, not perfection. And then I decided last summer that I really wanted to rebrand it, and Keep It Clear is what I wanted to move towards, because our podcast, yes, is skin focused, but it's also women's health focused. And at the core root of what myself and my co-host Chris do is we want to make things easy to understand, simple, which is what Keep It Clear comes down to.
Yes, I love that. And it's so funny you said you just picked a name, because that's exactly what I did with this podcast, Health Coach Nation podcast, in 2017. And here we are still using it. But to be honest, one day it may change. So tell me a little bit about, before the podcast, before working with so many clients, all the success you've achieved. Tell me, what were some of the early days of your business? What did they look like?
Well, I've been in the health and wellness world since about 2015. So prior to being a nutritionist, I actually worked in television. I worked for 14 years at Hockey Night in Canada. If you're not from Canada, that's our version of Sunday Night Football, one of the biggest national broadcasts in the country. I was working on air as a location host and a videographer. I never thought I was going to work in nutrition in the online space. Plus, back then, the internet wasn't really, social media didn't really exist. I'm dating myself, like it does now. So I had no idea that this was the career that I was going to get into for the rest of my life. So in about 2015, I ended up going back to school to study nutrition, got a job working for a big name nutritionist here in Canada, Julie Daniluk. And I started working from home in 2015, before people did this. And I worked for her, and I saw how she was creating her sales funnels, and saw how she was coaching online, and saw all these things she was doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I want to do something like this with my nutrition, because my goal had always been to get my nutrition background and then do something in television with my nutrition background. But as I was working with her, I'm like, oh, this can actually be a career, not just a side hustle. So I worked with her for a few years, and then I started developing my online brand. I'd always been posting on social media and trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my niche. And I didn't really realize when I was studying nutrition, until I got into about halfway through my very first textbook, that acne that I'd been struggling with for the past few years after coming off the birth control pill that it was anything but a topical problem. I'd done all the topicals, like I'm sure you can attest, Haley, on your own journey. And when I started to discover that acne was an external symptom of an internal issue, that's when I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is what I want to do. It's impacted my life working in television so much, my self-confidence, how I show up in the world. I want to be able to give that confidence back to women. So I really started launching the online version, because I've been working with clients before. Started launching the online version of my acne practice like late 2019. So come 2020, I was doing my very first masterclass or my first webinar back when people didn't really do this. And I remember doing my first masterclass, I had like 500 people register. I had like 250 show up live. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm doing so well. It was a few days before COVID hit. And all of a sudden COVID hits. I had probably 80 sales calls booked, not a single person enrolled, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. I got to close up shop. This is not going to work. And everyone in my life, because at the time, about a year prior, I had gone through 2 pregnancy losses. So everybody in my life was like, Katie, like, I think you need to take a break. Like you're working yourself to the ground. Like maybe this isn't a good time. Like the world is changing, but I'm so stubborn. And I was like, nah, I'm going to figure this out. So I kept going and I pushed through, and I'm so grateful I did, because having an online business in 2020 already set up really, really helped, because that's when everybody went online.
Oh my gosh, I totally agree, and was very grateful, not for COVID at all, but
no, not for COVID.
My business was online because so many people couldn't work. And that was a huge time when people were online and wanted to go online. So a couple things I love about your story. Number one, you said you had I can figure this out, or I'm going to figure this out mentality, which I think is so important. Number two, you worked for someone who was kind of like a mentor to you, or you were able to see someone in real life doing what you wanted to do. And I think that can be so powerful. So I'm never against, like, sometimes when my clients are having their own business, I always am not against them also doing like subcontractor work for a while, or getting in the field in some way so they can kind of see the behind the scenes. So I love that you did that as well. And then the fact that you had a 50% show up rate on a webinar, some people who don't know the general stats might be like, well, why didn't all 500 people come? But that is amazing for those of us who know like what's going on there. So now tell me a little bit about when you first decided like acne was going to be the topic you focus on with clients. Did you feel like that was a hard decision for you, or like was it just obvious that was your niche, or how did you take time to like decide that and own that?
Yeah, because this was back in the early days of like online coaching space, right? You've been doing this for a while too. And I'm such a big advocator of you need to learn from somebody. Like I've invested so much back in mentors and business coaches, because I didn't know this. I didn't go to school for business. I went to school for journalism. I have a television background. I knew nothing about this and like launching an online business. So I invested a lot of money back into this. And when I first started this, I wasn't even thinking about acne. I was like, because how I got into the whole healthy living space was my mom bought me this book called There's Lead in Your Lipstick by Jillian Deacon, because I'm a big beauty girly. Like I had a 6-foot-long IKEA makeup table with all of the high-end like MAC and Big Sexy Hair and all of like dozens and dozens and dozens of skincare and hair care products. And I remember reading the book and thinking, there's no way these toxic ingredients are in my products. There's no way. And I sat on my bedroom floor and I started reading one by one. I'm like, oh my God, what do you mean there's hormone disrupting chemicals and cancer causing chemicals in what I'm using? So I say gateway drug into the health and wellness world was learning about toxins in my environment. So I originally wanted to focus on low tox living. This was like 2017, 2018. People weren't really into it quite yet. So I'm like, I don't really know. And like I love it, but it doesn't really kind of resonate. I was thinking like, at the same time, this is when I was uncovering like, I've healed my acne and all of these things. And I'm like, I love talking about beauty and skincare and acne and confidence. And I know how much it impacted my life. So that's when I was like, you want to know what? I want to focus on this. Like because I know what it's like to like wake up first thing in the morning and cringe thinking about what's my new breakout's going to look like. Oh my gosh, I'm going to analyze my face I have to wear makeup in order to leave the house. I don't feel confident in my work. Like I knew how that impacted. So that's when I really wanted to not just have women clear up their skin, but get their confidence back.
I love that. Yeah. I hear so many people like feel wishy-washy about their niche, but at the
Mhm.
end of the day, you knew because it was something you went through and something you were
Mhm.
passionate about. And what would you say to somebody who is like listening to this? Maybe they don't know. They love health. They got
Mhm.
certified. Any advice you'd give them?
Absolutely. So I always say look back on your life and like what for a lot of health and wellness practitioners, they got into this alternative holistic health and wellness space because of something they experienced. Like 99% of the practitioners, they had a personal experience with acne, with thyroid, with Crohn's, with something, and oftentimes they had gone through the medical system and it didn't work out for them. They felt let down, they didn't feel seen, they didn't feel heard. And really looking back at your journey, I think is one of the most powerful things you can do because you understand and know the journey so well. And I think it's so important to learn from people who have been where you are because they get it. They understand. And for so many people, if you're working with someone who's never dealt with acne, in my case, you don't know that it's not just a physical issue, it's an emotional one, it's a mental one. And when you can really resonate with where your client's at, I think it can just give you such a deeper understanding of their journey and really allow to help them. So I always say, look back on what's impacted you the most. And then from there, kind of narrow down what you feel like you could really make a difference in the world with.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And I was listening to one of your podcasts recently, actually, and you were talking about how 2025 was a big year for you with a lot of personal life stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
And you've also mentioned in the past you've had pregnancy losses and
Mhm.
other things like that. And owning a business is hard enough, but when you're dealing with life stuff like that, that's way heavier.
Mhm.
How do you, first of all, how do you just decide how to keep showing up and what to share versus what to
Mhm.
not share? Let's start there, but I have
Sure.
more questions about this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I did have a very vulnerable podcast episode come out, but I've always told myself that because of, I have a platform and so many of us have a platform, whether it's small or it's bigger, it doesn't matter. And I've always wanted to be as transparent and share and be as vulnerable as possible. Because back in 2019, for my first pregnancy loss, I was 5 months into my pregnancy. So people knew I was pregnant. Like there was no hiding. Like I was pregnant. I had a belly. I was posting on social and talking about it. And when we found out 5 months in, and I had to be induced for labor and have a stillborn, I had to share with what was going on because I like my following was much smaller. It was only 5,000 at the time. And I had to share it because I didn't really have an option. And I made the decision of I'm going to put a blog out about it. I don't think anybody's going to read it. I'm going to do it anyways. And I shared it on social media. And even though I had a smaller following around 5,000, I received probably like anywhere from 5 to 600 comments, messages, emails, DMs across all the platforms. And I was shocked that anybody even read it. And so many women said, Katie, thank you so much for sharing that because I went through something similar and I felt so alone on this. I cried to myself. I had nobody to talk to about it. I had nobody to share this with. So I'm so grateful that you shared this. Some type of variation and like hundreds and hundreds of women said this to me. And from that moment in time, it really stuck with me of when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and to share, it allows other people to feel seen and heard. So I've always made a promise to myself that I always share and be as vulnerable as possible, even though it's not comfortable. Like it's not fun. Like the podcast I shared about how awful my mental health was and like all of that dark stuff. It's not fun, but when you're able to be uncomfortable allows other people to have that feel seen and heard. So that's why I've always shared as much as possible on my social media. And whenever I get those messages of like, Katie, thank you so much for sharing this, like that's really why I do what I do, so other people can feel like that as well.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's important that you were, obviously with the pregnancy loss, you shared
Mhm.
it kind of in the moment because it was recent and
Mhm.
obvious, and all of that. But I think with some of the other things, you
Mhm.
probably waited till you processed it a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yes and no. Like I've had 4 pregnancy losses at this point, and I had shared them. Like the first 2 I shared pretty early because people had known on like they were at 5 months and 13 weeks. I did have 2 losses early in 2025, and I waited like a few months to share it about that. And especially last year in 2025, it was a very difficult year. I think a lot of people struggled in 2025 if social media is anything to believe. That year of the snake, of the shedding and all of these things being released. And I do sometimes wait until I've processed a little bit and maybe gone through it and like figured it out a little bit and like how I can share it and what I can share, because sometimes in the moment it's a little painful. But
Mhm.
even when I shared that podcast earlier, I think it was the last podcast of the year last year, and I like shared everything. I'm still working through some of the stuff that I shared about. I'm not on the other side yet, but I think just having that transparency, saying this is what happened, this is where I am in the stage. I haven't figured it out yet, and I'm still going to keep going.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And I think the other thing though is it was probably hard to focus in your
Mhm.
business and do the things you normally do. So how did
Absolutely.
you keep yourself doing what you had to get done when
Mhm.
that was happening?
Yeah. And so when I look over, because anyone that runs a business, it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. And there's a lot of there's a lot of ups. Like the ups are really high and the downs are really low. And when you're running a business, the thing that I've learned most is having resiliency is probably one of the most important things in business, is being resilient, because there are going to be things that go wrong. There are going to be like society is going to change, the economy is going to change, you're going to shift, like things are going to break, things are going to happen. You're going to make wrong decisions, you're going to make wrong investment. Like there's so much that happens, and being resilient and keeping going even when it's hard is what truly helps a business succeed, because it is easy to quit. And I've wanted to quit so many times over the years. I think like any entrepreneur, you're like, that's it. I'm done. I'm gonna go be a librarian somewhere and not talk to anybody. And last year, it was probably the one of the most challenging for me mentally. And there were days when I didn't show up. And it was kind of like this mental battle in my head. I'm like, you need to show up and you're not. And it was like this back and forth. But I work in the health and wellness space, like so many of you listening. And I had to remind myself that I need to practice what I preach. Like I was like, if this was a client coming to me sharing this, what would I say? If this was my best friend coming to me and sharing this, what advice would I give them? Would I tell them you're being lazy because you can't physically get out of bed because your mental health is in the garbage? No, I would say you need to rest. Like you need to take care of
Mhm.
yourself first. And I'm in a lucky position where I do have team members. So I really heavily relied on my team members, Paige and Chris and our other coaches, and they were so phenomenal. So I'm so thankful that I had them, because when I went through this back in 2019, I didn't have anybody. It was just me. So I had no option but to keep doing the things.
Yeah.
So I think this year I've learned that I need to give myself a little bit more grace, and that I think another thing that I don't think I've fully worked through it, but I've been ongoingly working through it, is we live in this rat race society here in North America where we think in order to deserve being success, you have to kill yourself to do it. You have to be exhausted, you have to be burnt out. And then especially when you go on social media and you see so many people being like, no, you need to keep going even when you don't want to,
Mhm.
like you need to do these things. So I think it's finding that balance between, yes, still getting the things that you need to get done, but also allowing yourself that space and grace to rest and recover, I think is really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of the resilience piece with the
Mhm.
business, what are some things in 2025 that maybe weren't expected
Mm,
or you had to navigate or that were
yeah.
tough in the business, things like that?
Yeah, 2025 was, I think, one of the most difficult years we've had in business. And I've heard this from so many people, because society and the economy changed so quickly. Not only was there like the trade, like the change in like political, there was the change in like the trade and the tariffs, and the economy was going down. And like here in Canada, the economy has not been good for the last couple of years. And even looking at things like the addition of AI, like the addition of AI was huge last year. So now we're starting to see, longer lead times between people learning about you and wanting to become a client, because now they're like, oh, I'm just going to go and try over here. And they don't realize that they're not going to get transformation through AI. You're going to get information, but you're not going to get transformation. So last year, I really noticed a change in buyer behavior where there's a longer buying cycle, where people, and so many people I think have also been burned multiple times, because in the health coaching space 5 years ago, I guess 8 years ago now when I started, nobody was really doing it. Now the industry is saturated. So people are having to like sift through all of this information to find like who's the person for me. So I find the buying cycle is a lot longer. People's attention spans are a lot different. Even like the marketing, I feel what I feel like I really learned that how I was marketing last year, the word verbiage I was using, like the tactics of over educating and giving all of that, like 10 tips and this and that, it's not really resonating and hitting the same way that it did a few years ago. So changing, like I really sat with it as like, how do I need to change tactics and the verbiage that I'm using in my marketing for clients to understand of why they need the support and why they need the accountability and that coaching piece versus just get like oversharing all the information. So I really noticed that shift. I really noticed a shift in like we have a very labor intensive program. So we had to, and a labor intensive program means a higher price point. So I had to figure out like, how can we still offer the same level of care while seeing if we can bring the price point down a little bit, because the economy wasn't allowing for the price point that we had always operated at. So I'm like, what can I do to lower that price point for people without losing the level of support and care that we want every client to have? So we had to shift that. And I had being an online business, and I had a troll on Reddit have the nastiest, horrendous, like 4 scrolling novels of everything about me personally, my business, my team. It was one of the worst things I've ever read. And like it was even saying things about how I was a joke for being a nutritionist and having miscarriages. It's like they really dark things that I had been thinking about myself to see it online. So that really impacted how my want to even show up, because it's so awful to see. I'm like, I don't want to show up, and like I don't want to put myself through this, and like this is just so not fun. I also had an issue with an agency that I was working out. I had paid an agency a lot of money to do something and it didn't get done. So now I'm having to take legal action. Like it just felt like there's so many things stacking on top of each other. So I would say that's I guess a roundabout way of saying like I felt like society shifted so quickly, and it took a little while to catch up and figure out, okay, well, how can I shift with society?
Yeah, definitely. Love those examples you shared though about how you did shift and ideally things keep improving in 2026. And one of the things too that I wanted to ask you, because you do have a team, and it's like a well-run situation. So
Thank you.
what kind of systems or habits do you think have made the biggest difference for your business, and just also giving you your time back so that you can focus on what you need to focus on?
I had grown our team to be pretty large. We were operating in about 20 core team members. I was working with probably another 2-3 dozen different contractors. And I felt like what happened is I became successful very quickly. And we were doing like 6-figure months was like our average, but our expenses I had 6-figure expenses with 6-figure revenue. And I'm like, I'm making all this money, but there's nothing left at the end of the day, because I don't have a business background. So I was like, just like, yes, let's add this in and let's do that. And let me delegate this out. And it got to the point where the ship couldn't sustain it anymore. And I'm like, okay, I need to figure out like, how can I run this business without having a 6-figure expense? How can I be smarter with what I'm doing? So this is where I started to really try to like lean out the ship. Like, what am I overspending on? What do we not need? And it got to the point where like our revenue had a massive drop last year. And I realized like, okay, like we need to shift what we're doing. I need to pivot. Like I need to change things. So I shifted how our team works. I shifted contractors around, and I actually ended up taking on a massive workload in the fall. So up until the fall, like I was doing really well with my work-life balance. And then in the fall, when we had shifted everything around the company, I ended up doing like 80, 100-hour work weeks. And ended up being sick for 5 weeks straight in December. Shocking.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Shocking, right? My system's like, Katie, you can't work like that. Now we're going to give you 5 weeks of sickness and your body's going to calm down, whether you like it or not. So I'm now in that spot. We're going into 2026. I'm like, I don't want to feel like I did last fall. So how can I show up in a way where I need to get all of my things done? And this is where I've had to have some really big conversations with Paige and with Chris, who are my right and left hand. I'm like, okay, like what's realistic? What can I actually be putting on my plate? And it's like, do we need to pause some things? Like, do we need to hold on things? Like we can't be operating at that level that we were last year when we had tons and tons of help. How can we, restructure the business in order to grow it back to where I want it to be without killing myself? So that's where I've been really taking a serious look at priorities. And what I really love doing, and I do this probably once or twice a year, is doing a time audit. We're getting really honest with yourself of like, what are you actually spending your time on in a day? And it's, keep an open Google sheet or something on your computer. And every 15 minutes, you're logging what you did for those 15 minutes. Yes, it's tedious. It's kind of annoying to do. But then you can get really honest with yourself after like a week or two and be like, oh, damn, okay, I was spending a lot of, I didn't need to be doing that. Or, oh, look at, I was spent 30 minutes scrolling on social media when I didn't need to be. So I think it's finding those pockets of time and doing a time audit on yourself to see where you can get that time back.
Yes, 100%. I use the app called Toggle, and
Yes.
it lets you time yourself, and then it sends
great.
you a report at the end of the week.
Mhm.
So it's super helpful. What about like, so this whole, yes, you're trying to figure out what your priorities are so that you can slow down and not work 80 to 100 hours
Yeah,
per week,
preferable.
which is wild. How do you give yourself permission to slow down with, and because I know this is something that you've said you struggle with.
Yeah.
And I think I do too. I think type A people do.
We all
So
do.
how have you gotten more comfortable with it's okay if I slow down.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. Your business is going to be okay, etc.
I come from the world of television, so I'm a type A person. I'm a workaholic. I come from television where like a 12-hour day is considered short. So I was used to working 12, 14, 16-hour days. And I had translated that into the early stages of my business where I was working 12, 16-hour days. My husband, bless his soul, was doing all the parenting and all the things. And like I was glued to my computer because I am such a workaholic. And over the years, I really had to retrain my brain to say that again, just because society that we live in here in Canada and North America say that you need to be working 100 hours in order to be worthy and deserving of success doesn't mean it's true. So I had to start retraining my brain that it's okay to rest, that rest isn't lazy. Because again, in my brain, like so many of us type A people, especially women running households, I felt lazy if I sat down on the couch to eat something for 20 minutes instead of like sitting at my computer answering emails, going and switching the laundry over, like doing something on my to-do list, and really reminding yourself that your to-do list is never going to be clear. It's not like you're going to finish your to-do list like, oh, that's it, I'm done. You're always adding more. So it's really retraining your mindset that not only is it okay to rest, but it's necessary, because if you just keep burning the candle at both ends, it's going to catch up with you. Like I relearned this lesson in December when I got very, very sick. Your body is eventually going to force you to slow down. So it's like, how can you shift that mindset to say, no, like it is okay. It is needed. And especially in the health and wellness world, we all know how important rest is and really prioritizing sleep. So this is where I'm like, okay, even though say right now I'm in that season in the business temporarily where I am working till say 8 p.m. every night. Once I close my laptop, I'm leaving my phone in my office to charge. I'm not taking it to bed with me. I'm going to read for, a half hour, an hour. I'm going to talk with my husband. I'm going to have a bath and giving myself that like downtime in order to really help my brain recalibrate.
Amen. I love that. What's one thing with your marketing that you stopped doing that helped grow your business, that actually it wasn't bad that you stopped doing it?
Yeah. So I feel like I had been doing kind of the same tactic that so many has been doing for so long, right? You have the Facebook ads to the lead magnet, to your CRM, to your email list, to your sales call, to your offer, and etc. And I had been doing that same system and it was working really well for a very long time. And then I noticed last year, it's like my Facebook ads stopped working. And I'm like, what is going on? My messaging wasn't hitting. My followers were dropping. Like, I don't understand it was driving me crazy, staying awake at night. And I realized that you can't just keep doing the same things over. You have to be shifting with the market. You have to be shifting with the economy and society in like people's attention spans. So while I still have my lead magnet, and I am working on getting my Facebook ads, reset up, but leaning into ManyChat has been so helpful because bringing in more of that organic traffic through Instagram is like comment X word and I'll DM you with whatever, DM you the link. That's been really helpful for helping to grow our organic leads as well. And learning that, I so like I said earlier, I so often was like education heavy. It's like 6 reasons why your stomach acid is leading to acne. Now I realize that in order to get the individual from being just a follower and consuming my content to actually becoming a client where I can help them, because if they don't become a client, I'm not going to be able to help them. So getting them to become a client, I realized that I have to start bridging the gap between having all the information isn't enough for you to have that transformation. You need to know how to properly apply it in the right order in order to get those results and have the accountability and the coaching in place, because we can all start a health journey. That's easy. Starting a health journey, starting things is easy, but it's staying the course when you plateau, when things don't shift, when you have a flare of your symptoms. It's really being able to stay the course through that. And that's where the coaching and accountability. So I've really started to shift my verbiage and my marketing to be more about how working with a coach, it gives you the container for the transformation versus just being like, hey, here's a crap ton of free information. See you later.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And when you, I mean, as a business owner, I think a lot of us, especially when you started, you probably saw yourself more as I'm a health practitioner.
Yes,
not a
absolutely.
right. And you're having to make these decisions like, oh, my lead magnet's not working anymore. I need to shift. So how did you start to see yourself and trust yourself as a business owner? Because what I hear when clients come to me, and that this is partly why, is they don't know business, they don't know what they're doing, and they want someone to help them through that, but they don't see themselves as capable. Like they're like, they just never make decisions because they don't think that they can do it. So how did you start to like trust yourself as a business owner, make decisions, not stew on things? Or what advice would you give to somebody who's just feeling like stuck in that?
For sure. Because when I first started, I resonated. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist. I went to school and I worked with clients. And very quickly, we had too many clients where I couldn't coach anybody. So I brought in additional coaches, and Chris being my first coach, he's still with us today. And in the beginning, because I didn't know, like I said, I have a journalism background. I don't have a business in marketing and all that kind of background. So I invested a lot in business coaches when I did not have the money to invest. I used lines of credit. I borrowed money from my parents, and actually I borrowed money from their lines of credit. And I did put myself in some debt in order to gain the skills. But that's just like you go to university. If you're going to college or university, you're going in debt to get yourself a degree in order to get yourself a job. And so I reminded myself that I was making an investment in my future. And for an example, I like to give the example of a restaurant. You're not going to go and just open a restaurant. Before you even get clients, you got to, before you customers, you're buying cutlery and you're buying chairs and you're buying equipment, and you're going to be in the hole. So I reminded myself that I need to learn from people who have done this, because I don't have the knowledge. And if I don't do that, I'm not going to be successful. So I invested a lot in business coaching, and I pretty much had a mentor or coach of some sort from 2017 until the end of maybe January of 2025. And I got to the point where I'm like, okay, Katie, even people on my team were like, Katie, I think you know a lot more than you think you do. And I think I just got really comfortable with having a person to ask the things of. So last year I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have a business coach. I've been doing this for I've had a business coach for 7 years. I really wanted to trust myself and make the decisions on my own. And that's, I think, really where my business did start to shift for the better, because I was able to start trusting myself more versus relying on outside validation, and realizing oh crap, I do know quite a bit by now. Yeah. So I think it was just learning and finally accepting that I knew more than I thought I did, is trusting myself and just working on that confidence and self-esteem piece, because it got to the point where in my business, I no longer really resonated with the nutritionist title. I resonated with the founder CEO title, because that's what my role had become. And just trusting that I knew what to do. And, while there are difficult times in every single business, no business gets away scot-free with it being hunky-dory every single day. And learning that even in these difficult times of business is what lessons am I learning? It's making me a stronger person. And I like that saying, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. So when you have these challenges and these obstacles in your business, it's making you a better founder, a better business owner, a better CEO, a better whatever for, those future things to come.
Right. Yeah. And you probably, having 7 years of working with mentors and things like that, built up your confidence, but having belief in yourself. And so that in the future, if you were ever going to invest again, you're using it more as a tool instead of oh, I need this, or this is my
absolutely,
or that kind of thing. So what about with the new year being upon us? What does success look like for you this year? And maybe how has that changed?
Yeah.
The past.
This is a great question, because it's definitely changed. from what it used to be is when I first started this, it was just how much revenue can I bring in? Is the amount of revenue to me equaled success. But when I got into that predicament where your expenses are getting pretty close to what your revenue is, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter if I'm bringing in X amount of money, if it's just going right back out the door because I have all of these expenses to pay. So now for me, success is like, what are my profit margins? Like actually looking at what is the profit margin of what I'm doing? Because why do I want to kill myself running this business if profits are at like a negative 1%? So how can I like I'm fine with making less revenue than I was before if my profit margins are better. So I think that's a really good mindset shift to have, that it doesn't always matter like that amount, but if you're having good profit margins, so that's something that I'm really going to be prioritizing this year. Success for me also looks like enjoying my life, not being miserable, because so often as entrepreneurs, like we want success so bad that we are sacrificing so much in our life. So for me, success is also going to be including how happy am I? Am I actually enjoying the things that I've created? Because even though now I'm in like a hard season of life, like when I look back, like the life I'm living now is what I would have died for like 8 years ago. Like the Katie from 8 years ago would be so proud and so impressed with what I've built. But as entrepreneurs, we're always reaching for that next step. We're like, okay, well, I've hit that goal. Who cares? Like, let's get to the next goal. So it's like also acknowledging the when I do hit goals and being like, okay, damn, like that was good. Like, good job, Katie. And not always having to like reach for the next thing. Because my husband asked me something at the end of last year. He was feeling really ballsy that day, apparently. And he was like, well, like what level of success will be good enough for you? And I was like, Frank, that was a deep question that I don't want to answer. Because he's like, you never appreciate the goals that you reach. He's like, you never want to accept when you've reached these things. So I think success for me also looks like enjoying what I've built, you know, being happy, the profit margins, and of course, you know, having like the business being success and clients being happy and all of that as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Celebrating the success along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And why are you doing all of this in the first place? And are you happy with what you're building?
Exactly.
Any other final words of wisdom you want to share with someone who's listening, who's maybe stuck in a stuck phase in their business, either not growing fast enough, or maybe they're stuck because their client delivery is becoming too much? Any final words of wisdom?
Yeah. You know, reminding yourself that like business isn't easy. And that's why not everybody has a business, because it is a lot to take on. It's like, you know, birthing a child, and reminding yourself that resiliency and staying strong. And it's okay to have crappy days. It's okay to, you know, have a bad day or to cry in the shower and be like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. That is okay. But just, you know, then stepping back and looking at, well, okay, if the clients aren't coming in, or I'm stuck on plateaued, like, well, why am I plateaued? Like, and taking like an analytical look, like, don't, you know, try and take an unbiased look. It's like, okay, well, I've been using the same marketing verbiage for the last 4 years, and clearly that's run out. So how can I shift my marketing to what my audience needs now? Or if, you know, your clients, you know, something where your clients have stalled, it's like, okay, well, what do they need to hear? Because it really comes down to like, what does that client need to hear, or that person need to hear to go from an observer to an actual client? So just, I think, being a little more analytical and reminding yourself that businesses don't stay stagnant. They need to be ever evolving. And even your offer, like we've shifted our offer so much over the last year to really be more in line with what the client needs. And when your client load is, you know, really high, it's like, okay, what am I over delivering on that won't take away from the success of what my client's doing? Like, how can I revamp things? How can I offer things differently? And also is like, how can I actually leverage AI in a way that like helps my business, but still remain like my business still remains human? So I've really been looking into like, how can I be leveraging AI in a way that will work for the company?
Yes, great. So you're listening to if you're listening to this, you're allowed to evolve. Your offer's allowed to evolve. Your team's allowed to evolve. You're not going backwards if you're changing things. And for anybody also listening who wants the free gift of the day, I have my free weekly planning system. It's going to take you through how to prioritize the client generating activities and get out of the busy work. It's available at haleyrowe.com/time planning, all one word. And Katie, where can people check you out and stay in touch after this episode?
At Katie Stewart Wellness across the board, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, website. And then if you want to come check us out on our podcast, it is Keep It Clear, and it's available on all major streaming platforms.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I'll talk to you soon.